Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Rob at Smirking Gun Reviews, and since it's Halloween, it's October 19th, and Halloween isn't too far away, and it seems to be the appropriate time that everybody releases their what scary movies do you like review or post or whatever. I figured why not. It was kind of a hard list for me to make because I've seen so many movies, and I think I'm pretty much desensitized to most things. That not anything really scares me. I did recently post my reviews for The Haunting of Hill House, and that was a show on Netflix that really scared the crap out of me. But when I tried to think of 5 movies that still affect me on some level of creepiness that I've seen multiple times, it was very hard because there's a lot of movies that are scary that I like, but they don't scare me anymore. And for me, that's like to think of it like that. Like you can like it. Like I like The Shining. This was kind of one of my honorable mention type things. The Shining is a great movie. It's very psychological and dark, and there's images in it that are creepy, but it doesn't scare me. When I first saw it, I imagine I was scared and creeped out, but like not scared. It takes a lot to scare me, like as far as movies go. I have a pretty big imagination, so you'd think it'd be like easy to scare me, but I think because my imagination is so vivid that I'm able to combat it with other, I don't know, somehow. So these are in no particular order, the 5 movies that I think scare me. Now I guess I should give some honorable mentions, like The Shining. I remember being really kind of creeped out by the very first Ring movie with Naomi Watts. But when I look back on it, I'm just like, yeah, not really now. But at the time, that creepy kid, like the dead girl in the closet and the creepy girl coming out of the well, those were some pretty creepy images and scary, but I don't know if I was really scared or more like startled. And that's a problem I think that most of these movies have with jump scares and stuff, is you're not really scared, you're more like startled. Like the South Park episodes say, the startling, like, oh, I'm so startled. There's like a real difference between like when somebody comes around a corner and we jump and go, oh, like we say, oh man, you scared me. Really, no, it's more like you startled somebody. Like for a split second, I don't know. So these are, like I said, I know that wasn't really much of an honorable mention list, was it? Jaws. Jaws still kind of creeps me out and scares me at times. The Head, spoilers, by the way. If you haven't seen Jaws, I don't fucking care if you get spoiled at this point. But spoilers, because you got to tell everyone. The head under the water when he's like scuba diving and it just kind of pops out still gets me. The kid, when the kid gets taken, that's scary because it's a kid. Anytime it just kind of shows up out of nowhere, and like if you're not really paying attention, because it's one of those movies, if you've seen a lot of times, you can kind of have in the background. But if you suddenly get when the shark just will pop up, it can still be scary. And I really, I could stand here trying to think of scary stuff all day long, but I mean, this is it. So let's just start with the first one, which is Ridley Scott's Alien. Alien still works. It's, a spaceship. It's basically a haunted house in space, kind of, with a monster. The ship being the haunted house. And it's less than that. It's more about isolation. And for me, that's kind of a theme in this, is the fear of being by yourself. Now, on the Nostromo ship, there are a few people, but it's a big fucking ship, and there's only like a few of them on there, considering how big the ship is. And when you have just a few skeleton crew and this thing aboard, that makes it really scary. And the way that they do the lighting and the sound and the actors in this, and like Geiger's design of the alien, and how it's kind of like a bug, like and the changes it goes through, just from every aspect of it. Whether it was like the first introduction of the eggs, and they open up and you're like, don't look in there. And something's bad gonna happen, but when it happens, it's so fast that it takes you, like, you could shit your pants, man. If you're on the fridge, like if you were sitting there going, I have to take a shit, but I don't want to miss what happens, you could potentially shit your pants when that thing pops out of the fucking egg. The chest burst scene is one of the most visceral, like, just real moments, like, that felt like you were watching something really happening. Like, it was real horror. Sitting there, having just a dinner, having conversation, like nothing's going on, and then just absolute, the worst thing, like one of the worst things you cannot imagine this happening. So it just works on that terror level of having this mundane thing turn into a shit show of epic proportions. And then, like, as this thing kind of slowly picks everyone off, it's just, you never know where it is. And it's got this kind of malevolent feeling to it, where you can't, like, people are just kind of like scared so bad they can't even move. It just works so well. And like I said, isolation, being out in space, like one of the tags for this is, no one, in space, no one can hear you scream. That makes for an effective, scary movie, and it still works on me today. All right. The next is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, the original Tobe Hooper movie. Not any of the fucking remakes, reboots, whatever, sequels. Now, the reason this works for me is not because it's, really, it's kind of tame as far as gore and stuff goes. What scares me when I watch this movie is the evil. And also, again, a little bit of isolation. These people are out in the middle of a nowhere Texas place where no one can find them. You'd think that even in the 70s, well, I guess, that's the thing, is even back in the 70s when we were close to things being pretty, wide, like less wide open spaces is what I'm saying. That people could still just disappear. And you never know what would happen to them. And this is kind of one of those worst case scenarios, where what if you run into some people that are just so fucked? And the evil, again. What people are capable of doing to each other. Now, this guy is like bigger than life. And yeah, it's loosely based on Ed Gein. What wasn't back then? I mean, Psycho, for God's sake, was based on Ed Gein because nobody had heard of somebody doing something like Ed Gein did to people. And so everybody kind of started making their versions of that. And that's just the jumping off point. And just how these people are. But they're, for no other reason, the whole, like, small town, ignorant way of thinking, that kind of fear that people had of, like, the unknown, rural people, like, what if you run into one of those hilltop people, these, and just the character of Leatherface and just the callousness that these people have, that just kill these kids for pretty much no reason. Their reasons are as ignorant as what they think city folk are like. And that just creeps me out to no end, besides the violence in the movie. It doesn't have, like, any, like, really great acting in it. And sometimes I'm just watching it like, Jesus, like, this is kind of cheesy, but when the scares come, they really fuck me up. Especially, like, as soon as there's a guy in a wheelchair, you're like, well, that's going to be a terrible scene. Because where can he go? And it's as bad as it sounds. Because you can't get away in a wheelchair from a guy running around with a fucking chainsaw. And the other thing is, even when in the end, when the girl gets away, you can that just because she got away doesn't mean she got away. This will be something that has fucked her up for the rest of her life. And that evil will carry with her forever. So next we have John Carpenter's The Thing, which basically came out around the same time as like Blade Runner and Alien, around that same time. Now, The Thing is one of my all-time favorite movies, period. It's one of those few movies that, you know, is better than the original. When you remake something, it doesn't usually turn out as good. This is a vastly superior movie to the original. It is my favorite John Carpenter movie. It is my favorite horror, scary movie. I feel like this movie doesn't really fall into one category, because while it's got these supernatural, alien, sci-fi, it's also this paranoia thriller. It's body gore. It's so much. It's funny, but it's so scary too. And it comes from that paranoia. Not knowing who to trust, not knowing who is who and who is this thing. And that, like, mixed with the actual horror and the scares that come, that even though after all this time I know this movie beat for beat, that even though I know when it's coming, it doesn't change how I feel when the scares happen. For the most part, when I see the things happen in this movie, it still gets me like it was the first time. Almost like the first time. You know, there's kind of a lesser, you know, a little bit less, but still really effective. Like when the doctor tries to revive the guy and his hands go right through and there's teeth and it just chomps the doctor's arms off, and this character that you've been following is just suddenly dead. Or when, you know, the great scene that, you know, is a little like, why would you tie all these people up? But the scene where they're testing the blood, and the whole speech where you just know something bad is going to happen, but you don't know when. And just the idea of not knowing who you can trust. Again, isolation. These people are out in the middle of the Antarctic. You can't go anywhere. It's a terrible storm. Even if they wanted to leave, they couldn't. So they're trapped with each other, and they're trapped with this thing, kind of like Alien. And that, like, that's why in, like, as far as scares go, it kind of trumps Alien, because in Alien you know what the thing looks like. It's not pretending to be anybody else. And in this, your friend that's standing right next to you could be it, and you don't know when it's going to take you. And that just is so scary. And then it also has some of the best performances by actors that, you know, like Wilford Brimley. You know, people go, the great Wilford Brimley. But honestly, I haven't really liked him in anything. He's always just been an old man who looks like my great-grandfather in a way. And in this, I know him from like family stuff. So like when I see him in this, I get to see the actor instead of just the old grandfatherly character. Kurt Russell is so great in this. Keith David is great in this. Everybody is so good in this. People that I didn't know, like when I'd see them in things later, I go, oh my God, that's him. So yeah, it's one of those movies that I always wanted a sequel for, but at the same time, I'm like, don't touch this movie. And then they went and did it anyway, and they tell the story of what happened to the people previously, the Norwegians or something, right? They tell the story of what happens to them, even though it's pretty much like the same movie. Now, I've refused to see it because this is just way far superior to that movie. I don't even have to see it to know it. Next, we have a calendar. It Follows. It Follows should be one of those movies where I shouldn't like it. It's on paper, I shouldn't like this movie, where a curse is given to somebody. If you have the curse, the only way you can get rid of it is by having sex with someone, and through like a sexually transmitted disease, this thing goes to the next person. And this thing can look like anyone, and you're the only one who can see it, and it will follow you till it eventually kills you. You could run to the ends of the earth, and you may escape it for a while, but eventually it will find you, and it will kill you if it gets its hands on you. that alone is just scary. And the way it's filmed and acted and shot, and just, it's a unique take on what is usually a pretty stupid premise. And I mean, seriously, sexually transmitted disease curses should be stupid. But it just works. Somehow this works. And just the creepiness of like the different things that this looks like. And when they finally like kind of formulate a plan to try to, plans to try to get away from it or to stop it or to figure out what's going on, are all done really well. Especially when you get a group of younger actors, a lot of times you have the potential for it just being really hammy and cheesy and underperforming as actors. And instead, the acting in this is really good. So the acting elevates this kind of silly material that you could think of. And like the music, the 80s type, kind of synth music, and just the idea that anyone, kind of like The Thing again, that paranoia of you see somebody walking towards you, it could be your best friend. And maybe it is, but how do you know? They do it so well that, I mean, sometimes I think they had to make it obvious that it was something clearly that you go, that doesn't look right. One of these things is not like the other type of situation. And that, again, it just makes it work so well. And I love her in this. If you have not seen the actress's name in this, if you see It Follows, watch the movie The Guest with that she's really great in that as well. And so yeah, It Follows. It creeps me out. It scares me still. There's a shot where they open up the door. She's hiding in this room, and they open up this door, and this thing that they don't see, these two people are trying to help her, and they don't see this thing come right between them. It's this hulking, like tall, lurch-looking motherfucker, and the way that's shot, just so that that they don't react to it so well, as it just menacingly comes through the door, is one of my favorite shots in that movie. So let's get to our last one. And once it decides, yes, it's The Descent. This movie works on, again, isolation and claustrophobia. This movie would be scary enough on its own. Being underground and trapped and knowing that there's no way out but through. And then you have like the personal relationships that are not good. These people aren't happy. And mix that with the claustrophobia, and it is palpable in this movie. If you've not seen The Descent, holy forking shirt balls. If you don't like tight spaces, this movie might give you a panic attack. I remember the first time I saw this, I was just uncomfortable as hell to a scary degree. I could feel them going through the rock formations that were like, there's no wiggle room. And so when they can't get out, that movie alone would have been good enough as a scary thriller of how people can turn at each other and panic in times of very real, possibility of death. There's a great chance you're not going to make it out of here just from the environment and being trapped in the thought that you can just starve to death or run out of air. That alone scared the shit out of me in this movie. Kind of like noises in the house that don't need to be there. Sorry, I'm being a little passive aggressive right now. And then to top it all off, they add these underground dwellers, these people that have de-evolved to fit their living arrangements, let's call it that, of being underground. that they're blind and they're like animals. And if you make noise, they know where you are and they want to eat you. And so throwing that on top of it just makes it so much scarier. Now, honestly, I almost wish, like they've done, there's like director's cuts of this movie with and deleted or like alternate endings and stuff like that change like this movie. But I almost wish that there was a re-edit where they got rid of the creatures and it shot a version of it where it was just them fighting each other and fighting their own fears and lies and mistrust. That movie, I think, would have been great. And maybe adding that you think maybe that they're thinking that there's creatures down there, but it's really just their minds. And so I really do feel like this is a really scary movie on its own, and I really do wish that they had just left the creatures out, because that alone was scary enough. But then adding monsters is kind of like giving the characters like, oh, you think this is bad? You think this is bad? Well, let me tell you this. There's a whole like town full of monsters down here that you have to get past, as well as your personal problems. That is fucked up. So anyway, those are 5 movies that actually scare me still. So I highly recommend, if you haven't seen them, to check them out. So it's It Follows, The Descent, The Thing, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Alien. 5 movies that I highly recommend. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original Thing, the original Alien. Not any kind of reboots or sequels. So anyway, that's it. I hope you liked this video. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, all of that rigmarole. Hit the bell for all notifications of my videos. Like I said, I just did 2 reviews, a 2-part series on The Haunting of Hill House. I had a lot to say about that. And yeah, that's about it. So this is Robert Smirking Gun Review saying thanks for watching this. Thanks for all the support. And we will see you on the next video. Bye.